Advisor, school engagement at University of Sydney. And Sandeep will give us his expertise on the undergrad admissions in Australia. So any questions that you have, kindly write them in the chat box and Sandeep will take them one by one. Yeah. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you so much. So I just hope the session that we have today, we try to make it a little interactive as much as we can, and I'll leave for a lot of questions in the end. So during the presentation, when we go through, if you have any questions, any queries, feel free to drop them in the chat box so we can then pick it up in the end. But thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Sandeep. I've been working with University of Sydney for close to 4 years now. The initial part of my work with Sydney was related to admissions. So that is where I get my expertise from. So what we are going to do today is to first understand what Australia as a destination has to offer. We can talk about a few universities and then I'll get specific to University of Sydney just in case you have any questions or any queries. So, before we go ahead, let's start with a quick question. And the question is that you have to identify this image. So, if you can tell me what is this, just type it in the chat box if you know, and that would be great. Just identify the image and put it up in the chat box. What do you think this is? Perfect. This is Wi-Fi. Pretty easy, right? And what do you think is this? Perfect. Now, the question is there anything that you find common in this? While they both be related to technology, where do you think it was probably um, brought in? Where do you think it actually was invented?
Yeah, sorry,
Any,
yeah, sorry
yeah,
to just pitch in. Sandeep, can you make the PPT full screen?
yeah, okay, sure. Like, what do you see? Do you see the presenter notes as well?
Uh, no, it's coming as a small screen. So if you could just make it full screen, the PPT.
I'll just try to. Maybe I'll just stop sharing and then probably try to.
Reshare it. Huh?
Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah, this is better.
Okay,
Perfect.
sure. So, what I was asking is there anything that you see that you probably would think that this would be common? Ah, that probably, yeah, perfect. That's the thing. So, all these things, along with a few others, such as flight recorders, um, and zinc sunscreen cream, all of them were invented in Australia. Like just to give you an idea about the Wi-Fi, it was invented by a team of Australian scientists at the Cicero in the 1990s. Now, just to give you a little idea about what Cicero is, it is one of the government organizations of Australia, which has close to 3,600 patents, 300 licenses, and it operates under 80 countries, has close to 57 offices throughout Australia and overseas, and it is ranked in top 1% of world scientific institutions in 13 of the 22 research fields. You see all those research fields here. So that is what Cicero does. And the reason that I have tried to include that in this slide today is so that you understand that Australia as a destination is right up there when you talk from a research perspective or from a technology perspective. Now, even Google Maps, for that matter, while it is associated with the United States, the foundational technology, when it was known as Way 2 Technologies, was created by two Danish and Australian brothers, Lars and Jens. And the best part is it happened around Sydney. The few other inventions, as we were discussing, are around flight data monitoring, Winecast, even the black box that you have heard of was invented in Australia. And with that,
Sandeep, sorry to
uh-huh.
interrupt. Same problem. We can see your notes and the
Ah,
next slide. Yeah.
perfect. I'll just try to do that again, maybe in
No,
that
when you
case.
did
Just
it
a,
earlier, I think it was presenter view. Just
Yeah.
click.
okay, just a second.
You're using the PDF or the PPT?
I'm using the PDF one.
Okay.
So should
Yeah,
is
this
it
is fine.
better?
This is fine.
Perfect. So with that, I would like to welcome you to the great southern land of Australia. Now, what you see is the spectacular
Sorry, there are
lands.
some black boxes on the screen now.
Do you have the PPT of this, Sandeep?
I did share the PDF with you. Would you like
Yeah.
to share that PDF and probably I can stop
Yeah.
sharing the screen?
Okay, just let me try here.
Sure.
Shared documents, shared folder.
Okay, ma'am, I've downloaded this.
Okay,
also.
okay.
Yeah.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here, Sandeep, should I?
Yeah. The next one. Yeah, perfect. So, with Australia, the good part is that the workforce that you might have heard about is pretty skilled. And Australia as a country also has a very high, proud history of democracy and stable government. And now, why is that important? Is you might have heard about a lot of students who got stranded in Ukraine, and because of the current political scenario around Ukraine, a lot of students have to come back. So when you're trying to understand a country or when you're trying to go there, and we'll probably discuss that in a little brief a little later as well. But the idea is to ensure that when you're choosing to select a country, do your research to understand what all is included. Now, to that, if we can go back to the next, go to the next slide. Um, what I try to show is, and what you see on the screen is a little cute wildlife. And Australia is one of the 7 countries that together account for close to 70% of world species, such as koala, kangaroos, skunks, Tasmanian devil, platypus, amongst others. And if we can go to the next slide now. This is the map of Australia. We as University of Sydney are located in New South Wales. And as Australia, we are home to 10% of world's biodiversity from tropical rainforests in the North Territory that you would see upstairs in the north, and in the center, wherein the North and the South Australia, there you will find the red deserts and the snowfields of the Southeast. The 3 Australian cities, such as Melbourne, Sydney, and Adelaide, were listed in top 10 most livable cities, I think, in around 2019 by the Economist Intelligence Unit of Global Livability Index. Today, Australia is one of the most multicultural countries, and I'll probably give you a snapshot in the next slide that we'll see. But the Australians' passion for sport and for vast outdoors are matched by its excellence in research, design, innovation, and science. If we can come to the next slide, ma'am, what you'll see is Australia is sixth largest country and only nation to govern an entire continent. While many people think that Sydney is Australia's capital, it's not, it's Canberra. We have a population of around 25.7 million. I am assuming it would have increased to 30 approximately now. But the most important aspect is that 33% of the population was born overseas. The main language is English, but there are more than 300 languages as well, including the indigenous languages of Australia. If we'll come to the next slide now, And probably that will give you a little idea in terms of what all is included here. Most importantly, this is the immigration data. So a lot of people think that in terms when we talk about Australia as a country, it is specifically a PR oriented destination, which is not the case. Every country such as the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, everybody needs a certain workforce. So what they do is they invite applications for that. And the best part is that the applications from India have been the highest. We have left the China behind as well. But if you will see, people from first world countries such as United Kingdom, the US, have also been moving to Australia for better work opportunities. Now, while we are all here discussing why should we be going to Australia as a study destination, and if we can go back to the go to the next slide, ma'am, there is a question. Why should you be going abroad to study? Can I have that in the chat box, or would anybody like to unmute themselves and probably talk about it? And I'll repeat the question. Why do you think you should be studying abroad? Why not in India? More exposure of new customs and tradition. That's a great one, Kashvi. Thank you for that. Any other reasons? Maybe quality of education. That's what I've heard the most. Few people do talk about scholarships as well. A new perspective of gaining knowledge. Absolutely. Let's wait for one last thought before we move to the next slide. You might want to say how the temperature is and how the climates are. If we can go to the next slide, ma'am. So, generally, when we generally talk about course of choice, or sometimes we also talk about these scholarships and how affordable a country is. I mean, I just saw the chat. One of the questions were there around the finances. And according to a report by a leading study, it was said that people generally just look at the course of choice, whether, let's say, if you want to study business, is it available and how much costly it is. But also try to do and understand a lot more about how their education system has been, not just at the undergrad level, but from grade 1 to grade 12th. What did they teach and how do they teach it? How's the country economy been performing? Is it doing well? And not just go by the recent data, go by the, let's say, a decade or 2 decades data and understand how well the economy is performing. Is the country diverse? Do they accept international students and accept as and imbibe them as their own? How affordable a country is? And this goes very later in the conversations, but please understand climatic and geographical conditions are still one of the most important things that you need to be wary of. Is the country politically stable or not? So do your research as a parent and as a student and go through all the factors. There can be a lot more, but at least start with this checklist and just do not look at what is the ranking of the university. And I can say that while I'm ranked at 19th, do not go by the rankings. A top ranked school does not mean that it will fit right for you. And with that, we'll just introduce the Australia's education system, the economic credentials as we were talking about. If we can go to the next slide, ma'am. Thank you. So, what you see on the screen is basically education is Australia's largest service export. It contributes, I think, at the fourth number when we talk about its GDP. In 2019, we were world's third most popular destination, and as per the recent survey by one of the education consultancies, uh, at least in terms of perception, Australia ranks number one today. We have also talked about post-study work permits. So after you complete your bachelor studies, under the ACTA agreement between Australia and India, if you complete your bachelor studies, you get to stay there for 2 years. So it's 3+2 or 4+2. And if you're doing your master's studies and if your course length is 2 years or more, then you get to stay there for 3 years. In Australia, while you see that there are 1,100 institutions which offer more than 22,000 courses. Australia has close to 43 universities only, out of which 37 are public, 4 are private, and 2 are international private universities. Carnegie Mellon has a Australian campus as well, along with Torrens University. Now, what all can you study in Australia? Generally everything. So if you are interested to probably learn baking, if you hold an interest in brewery, or if you want to become an architect, maybe you want to become a teacher, a principal, an economist, a scientist, you can do anything. You can actually study music there. You can become a sports person. If you're looking to do a sports degree, even that's available. Deakin University has started offering it. If you're planning to become a pilot, University of New South Wales has a Bachelor of Aviation program. So Australia as a destination has a lot to offer. And with that, let's move to the economic credentials of Australia. Prior pandemic hit us, we had experienced 28 consecutive years of economic growth prior to when the pandemic happened. Australia's AAA sovereign risk profile, security and location at the nexus of East and the West makes it an ideal partner for trade, for investment, and also for collaboration. If you would have seen, Australia, along with India, have gone ahead to have deals with France, with India, with the US, and it has Australia as a destination offers a powerful combination of plentiful of natural resources, such as India does, and its highly sophisticated service sector. And the reason I say sophisticated is while it has the resources, it's still not in abundance. But its service sector is backed by an educated labor force also. If we'll come to the next slide, this is where we talk about innovation. As you all know, we are technically moving towards the fourth industrial revolution. But Australia, in terms of developed countries, is ranked first for technological readiness. We are ranked third in number. We have like the third highest number of universities when we talk about world's top 100 universities. And 50% of Australian firms choose to innovate and then adopt innovation. A lot of times you would have seen that the businesses that you are working under, maybe even if you're working in a school, maybe you're working at a IT sector, we choose to build on a lot of programs, but they are very least successfully implemented. Australian organizations do that. It also actually helps to contribute for global entrepreneurship rankings, where we are ranked fifth in the world as a country. Now, if we go to the next slide, ma'am, the technology credentials of Australia, we have close to 629 fintech startups, 500 medtech companies, 350 edtech, and 400 edtech and food tech companies. Australia as a country is very, like in terms of its landmass, compared to India, is very small. The population itself is, if you just add Delhi's and Uttar Pradesh's population, that's what Australia population looks like. But in terms of its startups, the organizations that it has actually overachieved itself. Um, and if we go to the next slide, you will see that Australia as a destination is hosting major global sporting events. A couple of them have already happened, including the Men's T20 World Cup. But if you'll see, Commonwealth Games is expected in 2026, Netball World Cup is expected in 27, and then rugby is also expected. And then in Brisbane, it is expected that there will be Olympics and then Paralympic Games as well. So all this offers plenty of job opportunities, not just as a full-time applicants, but also as a part-time job parts. Now, see, this is not of Harvard or even, let's say, the most highly ranked US institutions. I've tried to include institutions which are ranked in top 30. Can't name them, but the tuition and the living expenses for a year for the US, it's close to 60,000. I have not included if you get a scholarship here. The moment you talk about, let's say, a Harvard or an MIT, this cost goes up to 1 CR. Again, without any scholarships. For UK, like if I include the exchange rate as well, then it goes around 48, 49. This is one of the Scottish universities, but in general, again, the cost will still come to be somewhere around 42 to 43 lakhs. If I go in general, let's say if I talk about City University of London, the tuition fee and the living expenses will be somewhere around that. And also for Canada, if you'll see, it's again one of the good universities of Canada. Still ranked lower than Sydney, but I've tried to include that part so you understand the cost perspective. It's still around 50 lakhs per annum. Again, without scholarships. And if I do not include scholarships in Australia at all, we at University of Sydney are ranked equal 19th. Our tuition and living costs without any scholarship and award somewhere comes out to be around 43 lakhs per annum. It includes the exchange rate. Now, if you'll come to the next slide, ma'am, and if you apply for this award, which is Sydney International Student Award, it is purely essay based. Whatever you have scored in your 9, 10th, 11 does not matter. But if your writing component is good, and if you apply for that as a part of your application, if we come to the next slide, ma'am, this is what your tuition cost at Sydney would look like, close to 35 to 37 lakhs per annum. And if you try to compare that, and if you try to compare it with, let's say, an institution such as Harvard, we offer 60% discount with this similar quality of education. And we'll talk about the major and the minor components as to why it makes it that. But one of the rankings that there is of the graduate employability rankings. We are ranked fourth in the world, ahead of universities such as Harvard. From the UK, we are ahead of Oxford and Cambridge. We are first in Australia anyways. To the next slide, ma'am. It is said that Australia is not diverse as a country. And I've heard that from a lot of parents, and it's actually a general and a good question. But if we'll come to the next slide, and I've talked about it before, uh, if you'll see that percentage, 33% of population which is born overseas, they're bound to accept you as their own. And they do that. I have been there myself. And I keep talking about this incident wherein I went to do skydiving in Pixton Road. It's actually an suburb area. And I went on a Sunday. The transportation wasn't amazing. Two Australian natives, they just picked me up. They were truck drivers. And while they were supposed to go to the airport, they still dropped me to the university first. They risked missing their flights. And they did that for me. And that is something that will probably stay throughout with my life because that was the first time I went to Australia. And there are numerous incidents such as that wherein I've heard that people are so kind. Having said that, it is possible that there are some or one or two minor incidents wherein you may expect something which is not normal. But to say whether do we have enough places to ensure that in case something like that happens, do we have enough people in place to stop that and to take action on it? The polices are like around 2 minutes away. You have campus security as well. So anything that happens, it will be well taken care of. If you'll see life expectancy, for men, it's 81 years there. For women, it's 85 years, which is again pretty great. And if you will see, it's the languages in itself are pretty much. So I hope that clarifies the part as well, whether Australia is a destination. Is it diversity accepting or is it not? We at University of Sydney at least have the diversity scholarship. That is what we were talking about in Sydney International Student Award. It is only awarded to diverse countries. To the next slide, ma'am. Thank you. Uh, I mean, it is generally said that dangerous wildlife is everywhere. We did see a few examples. I hope nothing was dangerous there, but Australia is infamous for its unique and sometimes dangerous wildlife, including snakes. I think spiders as well, along with marine creatures. While these animals exist, believe you me, very relatively less people encounter them in the urban areas. And believe me, around it is said that around 50% of Australians actually live without even encountering them. So you don't have to be scared of that. The next slide would say that Australia is probably just about Sydney and Melbourne, which is again not the case. Country has many vibrant cities and regions to explore. I mean, I personally explored Tasmania the last time I went. It was actually amazing. There is something called Staircase to the Moon. It's in Broome. It's in Western Australia. Then there is turning of the figures. I saw Aurora australis and lavender fields in Tasmania. And then there is bioluminescent plankton in the Jervis Bay. It's, I think, around 3 hours drive from Sydney, but it's all there. And if anybody wants, I'll probably try to share that link in the screen. So probably you can just go through that. It's it's actually very amazing. So Sydney is like Australia as a destination. It's not just about Sydney and Melbourne. There are many cities such as Brisbane, Adelaide, and they have amazing lot to offer. If we'll come to the next slide, ma'am. This is something that is very education oriented. It is said that Australian universities, if you do not have maths, you do not get admission there. I can talk from University of Sydney perspective, and I'll give example of few other universities too. But for Sydney, if you come from, let's say, a humanities background, but you're interested to maybe study sciences or business, you can do that. Just know that you have to be motivated enough to even sustain that curriculum. But your background in terms of your education does not stop you from studying whatever you want to study. And as a humanities student, you can study marine sciences there. If you do not have math as a business student, you can study that. And that's very specific to Sydney. Even for, let's say, a university like University of Melbourne, if you do not have math, if I believe this right, if you do a course which I think is of couple of weeks, you can still choose to do then study business with if you did not have math. So you can do a course of 6 to 7 weeks and you can still move ahead with that. So math is not very essential, while few universities would want that, and I would encourage you to reach out to these universities and ask. But there are pathways to get through it. For Sydney, at least, you do not have any prerequisites. If we come to the next slide, ma'am. Yeah, this is a good one. Do all Australian universities require an agent to apply for a course? The short answer to this is no and yes. We talked about that Australia has 43 universities. Most of them will require an agent to apply. And the reason for that is to ensure that there are enough checks put in place to ensure that no fraudulent document comes across, and agents are our valuable partners. But University of Sydney allows you to apply directly if you want to. It is absolutely your choice if you want to apply through an agent or you want to apply to like directly by yourself. You can do that at University of Sydney. So with this, we end the myth wala part, and now I'll take to introduce University of Sydney to you. Um, we are ranked first in Australia and fourth in the world for graduate employability rankings. We are ranked 19th as per the QS World University rankings. The rest rankings that you see, they have been updated. I've heard that I think 2 days back, the new QS subject rankings have also been announced. But we have been ranked, I think, top 15, 36 subjects, which is again humongous. And for University of Sydney, wherein we are Australia's first university, it just actually takes away the cake. We have made lives better by producing leaders of society, which means we have taught close to 8 prime ministers, 110 scholars, but not just that. We have also taught 145 Olympians as well. We are Australia's first university, and as I said before, we have played an instrumental role in building Australia. Now, if we'll come to the next slide, ma'am. So these are the scholarships. We did talk about the Sydney International Student Award before. It's a part of your application. You apply for it. 20% of your tuition fee gets waived off for the entire course. The second one is Sydney Scholars India Scholarship. It opens every year in April for the upcoming grade 12th batch, as in like the one which will now enter the bachelor degree. It is already open for this year's students. There are 27 places there. It is divided in 3 tier. Tier 1, there are 2 places wherein students get 40,000 Australian dollars per annum. And if you club that with the Sydney International Student Award, 95% of your tuition fee is taken care of. The next year is 20,000 for the next 10 students and then 10,000 for the next 15 students. And it is India-specific scholarship. So the criteria is your marks and your application essay. So you have to go to the website to apply for this. Then Vice Chancellor, you do not have to apply for this scholarship. You just need to have an unconditional offer and you're automatically considered. And then there are some faculty-based scholarships as well. So for an example, you're studying Bachelor of Economics. That's the course you want to go for. So you will be automatically eligible for Faculty of Arts and Social Science scholarship. Again, if you're interested to study a business course, then you can apply for the business school scholarship too. Again, you're automatically considered. To the next slide, ma'am. Now, this is what the uh, year looks like for an Australian. Ideally, it starts from January, it ends at December, and that's how their education system is as well. But for somebody like India, China, the US, Hong Kong, all of us completes our exams, I believe, by March. We get our results by May. So for us, semester two, which generally starts in early August, is the primary intake. So does that mean that you start midway and you have missed out on a few courses already? The answer to that is no. You are starting as your first semester. While it is called as semester two, few universities may have a September or a November intake. Whichever intake you go for, this is going to be your first intake. You are starting afresh. So you are not leaving anything behind. Just know that. So your initial semester will be from August to October. During this period, you can work as a part-time student. You are allowed to work for 24 hours in a week. And once your examinations are done and the holidays are on, then you can work as a full-time student. So if you will see the slight less shade of pink, December, Jan and Feb and July, that is the period where you can work full-time. And during the rest period, you can work as a part-time student. So I hope that helps you to understand the timeline of Australian education system. Now the application process. It's very simple. Once you have finalized the universities and do that in this after having a discussion with the amazing counselors you have in your schools, but initially choose your course. And while choosing the course, do understand what type of courses are being offered. Sometimes it happens that, let's say you just come with a mindset that I want to study business, but you may not have the marks. So what you can do is just ask, is there a way I can still study business? And I'll talk about that, why that matters. But initially, once you have finalized your course, then check your eligibility on the website. I'll be happy to, after once we are done with this presentation, I'll just show you how to do that, at least on the Sydney's website. And I can take, let's say, an example of Melbourne as well, or maybe UNSW, whichever one you want me to. But I'll just show you how to check the eligibility yourself. In terms of documentation, the best part is Australia as a destination does not need LORs. We do not need statement of purposes or resumes until and unless a course specifically requires it. But in general, your passport and your recent mark sheets, that would suffice. We do not look at your marks. What have you scored in 9th, 10th, and 11th? If you're applying to an Australian university, what we are looking at is your final CBSE, ISC scores, and that is enough. Once you have submitted your application, if you're directly in touch with, let's say with me for the University of Sydney, do request for application fee waiver forms. And once you have submitted your application, you will get a conditional offer. Once you have met your offer condition, and that generally happens once you have met your language conditions, or maybe let's say once you have received your final scores, do submit them and then you get an unconditional offer. So it's very simple. I'll just repeat it again. Choose your course, apply, submit your application, you get a conditional offer, check your conditions and provide the relevant documents, and then you get an unconditional offer. Australian universities' application timelines are pretty fine, so they are not too much. It's pretty all right. If we can come to the next slide, ma'am.
Yeah, Sandeep, can you just throw some light on the group 8 universities also?
Yeah, absolutely. So a group of 8 universities are set of 8 universities which are very prominent in Australia. Now, these group of 8 universities are University of Sydney, University of Melbourne, UNSW, which is University of New South Wales, University of Queensland, University of Adelaide, University of Western Australia. So they are spread all across Australian continent. And in terms of its research, entry requirements, and the way the application process works, everything is more or less similar. In all of these group of 8 universities, only University of Sydney allows you to make direct applications. So while agents may be required for the others, for Sydney, you can apply directly. And the documentation part remains the same. So whenever you apply, let's say for an example, you choose to apply today, you should hear back from an Australian universities within 3 to 4 weeks. So we do not take as much time as, let's say, a US, Canadian university takes. We are
Mhm.
pretty quick in terms of the turnaround time. Like for an example, once your CBSE results are out, and if you feel it's urgent, on request of Anshu ma'ams or Poonam ma'am, I can get you the offer within 2 days as well. So that's how pretty quick Australian universities are. Now, when we were talking about, I hope that part helped, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. Sandeep, they offer the same curriculum as University of Sydney offers?
Ma'am, not all universities would do that. And their entry requirement and their prerequisites would also differ. I'll just give you a
Different,
very
yeah.
small example. Like for an example, if you want to study medicine in Australia, so for University of Sydney, your CBSE or your ISC marks would suffice. There
Okay.
might be other processes that you may have to appear for an interview, but that is it. But let's say a university like University of New South Wales would also want the students to take an ISAT exam.
Okay.
So every universities will have their different entry requirements, but in terms of what they offer as a course, like for an example, UNSW offers Bachelor of Aviation, University of Sydney does not. So
Okay.
they do have that major and minor combination, but Sydney's profile is slightly bigger because we allow you to take two majors as well, and you still can complete it within 3 years. Generally, other universities in Australia would want you to take a major and a minor.
Okay.
And if you take two majors, your degree length may increase if you do not manage it very well.
Okay. So it increases to what, 4 years then?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a way, because I'll just explain that course curriculum as well.
Yeah.
But the reason it increases is because, let's say if you are required to complete two majors, it means in Sydney terms, 48 credit points, which is equal to 1 year each. And then there are core subjects as well, and then there are elective subjects as well. So in case the student does not manage it very well, then the degree length may even increase. Now, what we do at Sydney is to ensure that there are regular checkpoints. So whenever a student has any doubt, he can reach out to us. So we can tell him, like, if you want to declare a second major, this is the right time to do that. So
Okay.
that intervention is definitely there in Australia. With Sydney, it's absolutely there, and with the other universities, I'm sure it's there.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, where we differ with other Australian universities is we offer something we call a shared pool of majors and minors. And now, how I try to explain this is with the US, you get that major and minor combination. In UK, you get 3 year degrees. We have just collapsed them together. So you get 3 year degrees and you get to choose your majors and minors. The second best part, if you are a humanities student, but you want to study science and business together, you can do that. Like for an example, if you want to study psychology and marketing as a humanities student, you can study that. And the degree that you can apply for, because let's say for an example, for Bachelor of Commerce, the entry requirement is around 93%. For Bachelor of Science, it's around 83%. So rather than applying for a commerce degree, you can apply for Bachelor of Science. Your first major can be psychology. Your second major or a minor can be marketing from business. So it allows you to pick and choose from wherever you want to. Now, let's say your preference is to study business, but you wanted to take a minor or a major in, let's say, international relations, but you do not have the relevant marks. Let's say you just have around 85%. So you can apply for Bachelor of Arts rather than Bachelor of Commerce, which has 93% requirement. Your first major can be international relations, and second major or minor can still be, let's say, anything from international business, let's say, or marketing or management. So Australia is not a degree nomenclature driven degree. We do not look at what your degree name is called. We just look at what specialization are you doing, and are you good at it. And while I said that we do not need SOPs, we do not need LORs, we do not need a profile like a US university does, but once you are on the campus, you are put in that rigor that you build everything up, because an Australian employer is looking at you managing your time very well. They are looking at having you having the multiple skill sets. So that's very important. So that is why we offer all this to you. To the next slide now. And with that shared pool thing, like this is your example. If you want to study computer science along with finance, what you can get to is being the fintech developer. If you want to study international relations with, let's say, cybersecurity, you can work with the UN as international policy advisor. So there are multiple options and different career prospects that you can look at. And this is what is very specific to University of Sydney. To the next slide, ma'am. And to the next one, because I think this may not be relevant to us. Again, the next one, ma'am. We don't have IB at all, right?
No, we do have IB board.
We do, right? So
Yeah.
in IB case, I mean, this is then the good part. Out of 45, we do not have any differentiation between HL or SL subjects. All we look at is what is your final score going to be out of 45. Now, after that, we do not accept IB certificates yet, but you can give a SAT or ACT, and that should hold you in good stead. I'll talk about that later. But one challenge with IB is that your scores come out after, like the June thing happens, and I think around 7th of July, that's when your results arrive. So, and the courses generally start in last week of July or first week of August. So rather than that, what you can do is you can ask your counselors to submit your predicted scores to us. Now, what you see on the right side of your slide is the Bachelor of Commerce entry requirement. It says 37. So if your predicted score is 40, which is 3 points higher than the original scores, you can get an unconditional offer in Jan of the commencing year. And then you can accept the offer, be eligible for scholarships, and even apply for your visa. So you can get a final offer on the basis of your predicted scores as well. I hope that helps, ma'am.
Yeah.
We accept IB course? I'm assuming again it's IB CP. If your degree deploy, so IBCP, we do not exactly accept it, but if you have taken a SAT, along with that, we can accept it. I'll talk about that in the while. Ma'am, is Cambridge relevant to us?
Yeah, till 10th standard.
So we
have,
don't need that because we just look at the grade 12 results. So we
Okay.
can skip this one then.
So you don't need 10th grade results at all.
No, ma'am. We don't need 9th, 10th, and 11th results. We just need your 12th final
Okay.
grades. So we can go to the next slide. CBSE and ISC. So if you're a CBSE student, we just look at your grades, not at marks. And let's say if it says 18.5, so you just add according to these grades. They are given on your final 12th mark sheet. Even the online result will have it. So you just add any best 4 subjects, and your best 4 subjects can be English, physical education, math, and let's say history. And that would also count if you are applying for a Bachelor of Science, maybe let's say chemistry as a major. So that's what your best 4 subjects are. In terms of ISC, any best 3 subjects plus English gets mandatory there. So these are the requirements. To the next slide, ma'am. Now about the SAT and ACT. So if somebody who does not have, like if you're doing IBCP or if you're, let's say if your ISC marks do not meet the requirements, you have an alternate option to give SAT or a ACT test. It is out of 1600. Again, this is for Bachelor of Commerce where you need 1350. We do not need subject tests. The general ones are accepted. So we accept that. So we had a few questions, I think, from Kashvi. So if you don't have a SAT or ACT, but you are doing IBCP, then you will not be able to apply. So I would suggest that you get a SAT or a ACT test. And then the other question is for ISC, applications will open after board results? No. So for any course that you apply after, apart from a certain courses, I have mentioned that below. The applications open when you're in 11th. So when you're in 11th around August, the applications open for Australia, and that's for all the destinations mostly. So you can start applying then, you get a conditional offer, and then you can just ask your queries and give your things by once your final results are out to get an unconditional offer. Now we'll just talk about the entry requirements. So these are few general courses such as Bachelor of Arts, Economics, Commerce. In terms of IB, if you are giving us the predicted scores, they should be 3 points higher than the original requirements. Again, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th midterms are not required at all. If you submit, it's all right, but we do not need it. For ISC, these are your marks, and for SATs as well, and ACTs, it's mentioned. And where it says high school diploma, it just means completion of your IB, CBSE, ISC exams. To the next slide, ma'am. Again, these are few other courses such as Bachelor of Visual Arts, Bachelor of Design Interaction Design. So if you're interested in graphic designing, we have that course. Design in Architecture. So if you want to become an architect, that's the course for you. It's only available in Feb though. And so is with Architecture and Environment, Social Work, and Bachelor of Education as a degree. Next slide, ma'am.
So would you require a portfolio for these
Not for
courses?
these courses, ma'am.
Not even architecture?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Now here you have additional requirements. Like for an example, if you're applying for Bachelor of Music, you are required to record yourself while playing an instrument, send us a video file, and then they might interview you for that. For Bachelor of Education, you may have to write extra statements. So a statement of purpose is required. For Bachelor of Science and Doctor of Medicine, you will be required to appear for an interview. If you're applying for Veterinary Science and Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, it's a 6-year course. You will have to write a commitment statement. You have to do an internship as well with a vet clinic and get a reference letter for us. And you also have to take a Casper test. So that is the thing. And then there are other courses as well, such as liberal arts, psychology. For these courses, you do not need anything else. You just need to meet your entry requirements.
Sandeep, how easy or how difficult it is to get into a medicine program in Australia?
That's a very good question, ma'am. And believe me, I can have another session on this. But for Bachelor of, like, I just give you a very, like, I try to break it down. It works very similar to how it works in the US. You have to do a bachelor's degree and then you get to a doctor of medicine. So
Okay.
initially, when you do a Bachelor of Science, it's a 3-year program, followed by a 4-year of Doctor of Medicine. Now, if you're applying for this program, Bachelor of Science and Doctor of Medicine, it's only available in Feb. I'll take Sydney's example. We only have 10 places for international students. So let's say for an example, for IB, you need 45 on 45. For CBSE, you need all A1 subjects. For ISC, you need 99% in Best 3 plus
Oh God.
English. Once you have that, then they will interview you. So getting that does not guarantee admission.
Okay.
Then they will interview you, and after that, only 10 students are selected.
Okay.
So what I generally advise to the students is initially apply for Bachelor of Science, Medical Science, the program on your right, uh, second top, Bachelor of Science, Medical Science. So you can apply for that. And when you are in your final year, take a GAMSAT or an MCAT exam, and then apply for Doctor of Medicine separately. The course duration remains the same, the tuition fee remains the same,
Okay.
so nothing changes.
Okay.
But when you're then applying for Doctor of Medicine, then you have 60 places available. So
Okay.
that really helps you.
60 in one university.
One university. So that's just for University of Sydney. You also have Monash University. For them, their medical program is only of 5 years.
Okay.
For University of New South Wales, that's for 6 years. For Melbourne, I think, and along with Sydney, we are both giving 7 years programs. So that is how different it is. So yeah, I
Yeah,
hope
thank
that helps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure, ma'am.
Should I come to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am. No, so that's the point. Why should you even be doing your degree at Sydney? One, because you get to design your own degree via shared pool of majors and minors. As I said, I mean, you are a humanities student, or maybe you're a science student, and you feel that you want to study business and you want to study science together, but you don't want to do a dual course, because let's say if you do a dual course, that means you are staying in the education system for 5 years. So you're spending 2 years more of tuition fee along with your living expenses. But the most important part is you are losing out on time. You will be entering the job market 2 years later. So rather than doing a dual degree, you can just start with a Bachelor of Science degree with, let's say, any of the major from there. And your second major can come from either arts, business, or even music for that matter. And you can still complete your degree by 3 years. If you're doing engineering, that's a 4-year degree, but still you have an option to involve entrepreneurship and innovation as an option. So you get to design your own degree. Then you also get to work with industry leaders. And so how that happens is something that I'll include in the next slide. But what I'll say here is that while you're studying, work integrated learning is a very important concept to Australian universities. You are working while you are studying. And whatever concepts you are being taught, they actually help you to get through. Now, along with that, you are also allowed to go on an exchange program. Like for University of Sydney, we have partnerships with close to 240 universities worldwide. That means you can go to a Harvard, Yale, Copenhagen University, maybe UCL, to do a semester exchange program as well. Or let's say if you just want to do a cultural exchange at, let's say, Italy, you are allowed to do that. So that helps you to develop a global perspective. If you are a high achiever student, maybe let's say you have been achieving constantly high scores right from the beginning. So we do have enrichment opportunities. Like we have a program called Daliel Scholars, wherein the dean of that specific faculty will be mentoring you personally. So that is how the opportunities are given. And then most importantly, because of that shared pool of majors and minors and something we call as open learning environment unit, you get to build diverse skill combination. Like when I was in Sydney last time and I met a couple of employers from ENY and also Macquarie Bank, what they mentioned was, Sandeep, that today we are not looking at somebody who is amazing at tech. While we want that, we also want to have that person have a humane perspective to everything. They should be able to manage multiple projects. They should be able to, like, for an example, lead a project in case the team lead is not keeping well or just needs leave right away. So somebody should be able to step up. Now that's what the economy and the employers are moving towards. That's what they want. So if you do not have diverse skill set, if you just come from a headset that I would want to just do software engineering, then study cybersecurity, or maybe I just specialize in AI and that will just help me good, that can help you in the initial level of your career. But if you want to move ahead, if you want to surge ahead, that is where your leadership skills will matter. So that is why I would suggest you to do an undergraduate degree at Sydney. To the next slide, ma'am. Now, internship and job placement options. At University of Sydney, there is something that we call as work integrated learning. What that means is that it provides you opportunity to work on real life projects with the organizations while you are doing your degree. You get to go on work placements, you get to go on internships, consulting projects, study tours, and you get to earn credits towards your degree too. And each of these programs, the one that you see on the screen, Job Smart, Industry Placement Units, Capstones, they are designed uniquely, which aligns with our degree, along with a specific purpose that might serve that company. So, for an example, you are working with Macquarie Bank. They have a specific challenge, and that has aligned with our degree. So, you get credits for us as well. You also get to build your own network with that specific bank. So, once you're done with your degree, you can actually look out for job opportunities there. And the tasks could include, as it says on the screen, they might ask you to do research. They might ask you to develop their social media engagement. They might want you to write concise reports as well. To the next slide, ma'am. Now, through this, you just don't earn money, you just don't get experience, but you also understand and develop critical thinking. You understand how to use effective skill sets, the communication part of that. And some of our placement partners are Commonwealth Bank, Allianz. These are just few: ENY, City of Sydney, Telstra, but there are way too many, including Microsoft. So we have a whole lot of internship and placement options, and they start from your second year of your bachelor's degree at University of Sydney. To the next slide, ma'am. Now, in terms of accommodation options, accommodation in across the world is a problem right now. I'll be very honest with that. If you will see, we are a 82,000 university campus. But if you will see, are the places enough? They are not. They are close to, I think, 6,000. So a lot of students end up living off the campus as well. So if you are, let's say, above 18, you can live off the campus and you can work apart from the campus as well. So it's not required that you can only work on the campus or you can't work at all. Australia does not have that limitation. If you are 18, you can do that. So university residences at University of Sydney, this is what your cost looks like. Across the year, you can expect your living cost to be somewhere around 25,000 Australian dollars to 30,000 Australian dollars, which roughly goes to 10 to 13 lakhs per annum. If you're looking for meal options within the accommodations, then that would increase your cost. Then you can expect somewhere around 15 to 16 lakhs of your living expenses. But then, as I said, you're allowed to work part-time when your session is on. You can work full-time when your session is off. So you can supplement your expenses, but then it cannot cover everything. So just know the reason I had suggested before that the applications open in April, I mean, a year early, I would suggest you to apply as early as you can whenever the applications open, because once you have a conditional offer and once you are closer to your intake, like for an example, for July intake for 2024, you could have started applying for around March and April. So that is a good time to book your accommodation, because if you wait till the very end, let's say June, then your prices shoot up as well. So be wary of that if you're looking to study in Australia. Do take care of your accommodation options. And again, anywhere in the world, try to book them as early as you can. Now, these are the terms which are very specific to Australian diaspora. You'll say, sometimes you will see on the website it says ATAR. Again, you don't have to be worried about that. Australian universities take care of them themselves. You just have to furnish your mark sheets. You do not have to be worried about what ATAR is. UAC is something for domestic students or for New Zealand students or for somebody who has a permanent residence there. If you are an international student, you do not have to be worried about it. UAC International, again, if you are doing IB, you still do not have to apply from there. You can apply directly on the website. Conditional offer is something wherein if you do not have your final scores available, as I said, we just accept your final 12 boards. Does not mean after that only you can apply. You can start applying earlier, get a conditional offer, and once you have your final scores and if you meet the requirements, that is when you get an unconditional offer from us. Now, the English language proficiency is something which is important. So for IB and A-level students, you do not need to appear for IELTS for the university, but for your visa, you will still be required to appear for either IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE. If you're a CBSE student or an IST student, most of the Australian universities will not waive off the entry language proficiency requirements. I think University of New South Wales does. If you have 70% in your English in your 12th, they may waive it off. It changes every year, so I would advise you to reach out to that university. But University of Sydney does not, so it advises you to appear for your language proficiency test scores. If you have appeared for SATs, then do request your school counselors to submit your completion letters. They can be issued in January. With basis that we can again give you an unconditional offer. We do not have to wait for your final scores. So I hope that is helpful. That would be it from my end. I'll be happy to take questions and queries now.
Excuse me, could you show me the last slide, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Anything else that you might want to ask from me? I do see we have a couple of questions in the chat box, so I'll try to probably take that. So first question is from Pradeep. School gives predictive scores basis, including weightage for 10th marks as well. How do you take that while giving preconditional offer? So there is no preconditional offer. We call something as conditional offer. While giving you that, we do not look at your marks. So you can maybe just have 33% or 99%. That does not matter. But yes, if we are considering your application for, let's say, an unconditional offer, and if you have a predicted score, if you are a IB student for CBSE and ISC, we do not accept it. But if you are a IB student, then we can. I'll just try to share my screen so you can just see that.